Good afternoon. Just wanted to give you a little update. I think we can now say we have had meetings with the governor and his commissioners and staff on all of the budget bills that are on his desk, awaiting his action. I would say awaiting his signature. So I would describe these discussions and meetings as cordial, actually fairly substantive at times, depending on the bill. I think the governor, I think it's fair to say the governor and his administration have a better idea of what is on his desk, and we would hope he would act. We would hope he would sign these, or if he has differences, or dare I say the word veto, that he explains that very specifically so that we can bring this session to a close. We have, I don't know what we're down to now, 10, 11 hours left, and we will be on and off the Senate floor, and we are prepared to be here up till midnight and work with the governor and work with his administration. We are proud of what we've produced, and I think walking through these bills yet again, you know, most of these, all of these were conference committee reports that were posted days, if not weeks ago. So there's nothing new here for the administration. So we put together a budget that lives within our means, that doesn't ask more of Minnesota taxpayers and Minnesota families in the midst of rising gas prices and falling home prices. We think this is what Minnesotans can afford, and we think this is what sets us up for economic recovery, because as we've noted before, we don't just have a budget deficit here in Minnesota, we have a jobs deficit. So we want to do what we can to grow the private sector economy, and we think putting together this kind of a budget and completing our work by midnight tonight is an important step in that process. So stay tuned. I'm sure there'll be some more updates. But this is what we have laid on the governor's desk is a budget that can pass the legislature, that has a majority of votes. We had some, I guess I'd say, participation this week from the minority caucuses, but they never produced a budget. They didn't carry the governor's budget. They didn't carry the governor's second budget proposal. So this is what can pass the legislature, and we hope the governor will act and act quickly. Happy to take some questions at this point.
The governor said earlier today that if you guys go to a special session, which now seems likely, that everybody is to blame. It's a failure on all your parts. Who should Minnesotans who will probably be angry that you didn't get done on time, who should take blame?
Well, two things, Geoff. I'm optimistic. A lot can get done in 10 hours in St. Paul. But, and I continue to not believe that Governor Dayton's going to take us to a shutdown or a special session just for a tax increase. That in order to have the second highest tax rate in the country, that he's going to put us into extra innings.
Pretty clear that he will.
Well, we'll see. We'll see. But you know, our answer in an economic recession cannot be that St. Paul and state government is going to spend more and is going to tax more. We can't do that anymore. That's not 21st century budgeting. That's not 21st century state government. So I know a lot of things are said here at the state capitol, but again, I find it hard to believe that Governor Dayton's going to put us into a special session.
Governor said earlier that he doesn't plan to act on this today. Where does that leave you?
Well, I think technically, if he didn't sign them, then they become law.
I think he has more time to act than today.
I'm not so sure.
He wasn't planning to do anything today.
Well, he's got 3 days to act on them. We can get back on that, but if he has 3 days, and if he doesn't sign them, it becomes law after a certain amount of time. I'm not sure if that was the kind of option he was trying to keep open, Martiga. So.
Senator, is the Minnesota Senate preparing bills for a lights on government shutdown?
We will, again, we're going to be fluid with our calendar, Pat. So going forward over the next 10 hours, we will be here. We will be here, you know, barring some kind of special agreement that allows us to close up business before. We'll be here up to midnight. We're ready to meet in small groups, in large groups, in public settings, in private settings. We can meet here. We can go to the somewhere else in St. Paul. We will go wherever the governor needs us to go.
Bills have been introduced. Is the Senate going to act on them today?
I'm not sure I'm familiar with all the bills that have been introduced. I guess I'm aware that some lights on bills have been introduced as what people call kind of a continuing resolution. We have no set plans to take that up right now.
Now that there's been meetings on all the bills, I mean, is there any bill in particular that there's been more progress made on than others?
You know, I think the most progress, if I was to pick out a budget bill, and we've got 8 remaining, I think the, shall I call it the most likely to be signed, is the K-12 bill. We've done some more analysis on this, and the K-12 bill on the governor's desk is 99.6% of what he asked for. If you just look at money, if you just look at funding, we are at 99% of what the governor and his budget submitted. So I'd say that's pretty close on funding. And then more importantly, it is chock full of reforms, of ways to get better performance out of the schools and out of the classrooms. And so I think this is an opportunity for the governor and legislature to work together on landmark, nation-leading K-12 reform. I think the governor has an appetite for that. And if we're that close on the funding, just the raw accounting of it, then I think I'd call that the most likely to be signed.
But has he been willing, that he's indicating that he's be willing to budge on any of the collective bargaining parts of that bill?
I can't say I've been in every meeting involving the K-12 bill, but I think the governor has already displayed an appetite for reform and frankly some independence from kind of the status quo and the special interests that often dominate the K-12 debate. So I think that's the one we should be the most optimistic on. And I'd note there are 500 school districts and charter schools that are waiting for a K-12 budget. That's 40% of the state budget. It's often referred to as the most important thing we do, funding our schools, funding the classrooms, setting a budget for the future of Minnesota. So that should be the first one we do. I mean, if you had to pick one to be optimistic about, I'm optimistic about K-12. If you had to pick one that should be the first, let's do our first things first, let's do our most important things first, it should be K-12.
Senator, if you return to your district tomorrow without a budget deal, what would you anticipate your constituents saying to you, and what would you say to them?
Well, I'm going to be optimistic. So your hypothetical involves us not getting our work done on time. I think what I would, to be very, my backyard, people would love this K-12 bill. People in the western suburbs would love to hear about the reforms that are in this K-12 bill, that it's the first thing we did, that we had a lot of common agreement with Governor Dayton. So I think I'd want to talk to them about that. And then I think I'd want to talk to them about budget and taxes. I think people are surprised to learn that across the country, there's only 6 governors who are even asking for tax increases. There's only 6 governors who are trying to balance budgets this year with a tax increase. So we don't want Minnesota to become an outlier. We don't want to be less and less competitive. We're already kind of cold, but we don't want to price ourselves out of a growing economy and out of job creation. So I think I'd talk about schools and I'd talk about jobs.
Sen Michel, at what point do you concede special session? Not until midnight or several hours before?
I don't even want to use that word until I have to. So we're going to be, because we've got work to do. We've got work to do, and we've got energy and commitment to do it. So
The governor vetoes this action.
he hasn't. I was just told he hasn't vetoed anything. So we're hoping for
He
signatures.
said he's extremely pessimistic. That was his exact words this morning. Yet you're saying you're optimistic.
I would say this. Governors should be optimistic. Governors should help close the deal. I've been with this governor for the last couple hours, and he's in a position to close the deal. So let's do that. Let's use these last 10 or 11 hours in a productive way, in an optimistic way. That's what Minnesotans want to see. That's what Minnesotans want to hear. When all the noise is gone from this place, they want to know that we got our work done. And I do think it's important that we get our work done on time. So I don't want to talk about lights on. I don't want to talk about special session. I don't want to talk about overtime. let's get our work done. So we are here. Some of us are here, some of us are upstairs, and we're ready to go, and we might even do it with some optimism.
Any more meetings scheduled? Is that Thursday?
Not for me, but maybe he doesn't want to see me anymore.
Have you guys been discussing the issue of gambling revenue in any of these meetings today or this weekend?
No.
Not at all?
No. Thank you, guys.
Is there compromise meeting us halfway?
Compromise is a good thing.